I know you've probably talked a lot about the car and all the projects in Koenigsegg, but today we kind of really want to focus a bit more about you, about, let's say, the challenges you went through building Koenigsegg.
Sure. Absolutely.
And maybe like also the challenges which were before Koenigsegg was a thing, because
Right.
many people always see these, let's say, finished products. They see a car down there. They don't know exactly what's been going on to get
Right.
to that level. And
Sure.
that's for us the interesting part. We've called this podcast the Lobster Fight. And to many people we spoke with already here, are like, why is it called the Lobster Fight?
Yeah, interesting name.
It's different, but it really means these challenges that we go through in life or difficulties, how we handle them defines if we come out of them as a stronger lobster
Right.
or a weaker one.
Right.
And that's why we want to go today with this episode of the Lobster Fight.
So the thing I know about lobsters in that regard, I think, is whatever Jordan B. Peterson was talking about.
Correct.
Exactly.
Is that from him or?
Correct.
That is cool. It's not many people you can put in front of a microphone that'll get that reference straight away. So compliment to you for that. That means that you probably understand not the methodology but the metaphor behind it.
A bit, yes. I heard him speak about it. So
Yeah,
and it's interesting, especially the emotional aspect of lobsters.
exactly.
And how old they are, and it kind of makes you maybe not want to eat them when you think about it.
You're right. But this was what let's say inspired us to have a common name for the podcast, to set the framework of where we want to take the chat.
Right.
And let's get into it and see where today brings us.
Sure.
Exactly.
I will then start by asking you the defining moment in your life that put you on the course of where you are today, if you can think of it.
I get the question a lot, I guess. Why do you build cars? And the first years of doing Koenigsegg, I kind of answered, I was always interested in cars as a kid and something I really love. And then usually the comeback was, but there are a lot of people who are car interested that are not doing what you're doing. I said, I guess. So why? And then I started thinking more deeper about it. When was my first memory of wanting to build cars? And it comes back to, and it's also my father's he helped me remember this because he remembered it very vividly. And it's also my first memory, maybe because he reminded me, I don't know. But anyway, when I was about 6 years old, my father took me to the movies, and we saw a Norwegian sort of stop motion puppet movie. This was like in 1977 or 1976. This was way before computer animations existed, really. And there was this kind of intricately made puppet movie about a bicycle repairman who was like an inventor, and he lived on top of a mountaintop similar to this we have in front of us here, Lake Como, and he had this bicycle repair shop up there with his 2 helpers, and they started building this crazy wild race car that he wanted to compete with. And then he took it to kind of a Le Mans style race and beat the Porsche, the Ferraris, and it was so well made. It was like, I showed my kids a couple of years back. I thought it's going to be horrible, this movie. I haven't seen it for many years, but it was still as amazing, so well made. And so he raced all these famous brands with this kind of home-cooked thing, and it had a lot of inventions, had a rocket engine and a 12-liter engine, and it was a lot of strange inventions, and he won the race, of course, after some struggles. And I apparently told my father that when I grew up, I want to be that bicycle repairman and build a car like that. So I started drawing cars. I started buying car magazines for all my pocket money, and just had this vision of I'm going to build a car when I have a chance. So when I was 19 years old, I kind of felt a little bit fed up with school, and I'd felt like that for a while and wanted to get out there and do stuff. And especially, of course, having this dream of a car. But I understood I need some kind of platform to create a car. I don't have the resources. So I started a company. I had some ideas for inventions and things, generally speaking, which I thought maybe I can make a patent, maybe I can make a little bit of money. But I also started kind of buying and selling things to make money. So I found out that after the Iron Curtain fell in the Baltic States, which is close to Sweden, they needed a lot of things that they didn't have, like ballpoint pens or plastic bags and things like that. And then I found ways of buying that very cheaply in Sweden with like wrongly printed plastic bags and commercial pens with prints upside down or things like that that you could not use or sell in Sweden, but they were happy to have a plastic bag and have a ballpoint pen. So I could buy it almost for nothing and sell it very cheaply and make some money on that. And it turned into a little bit of a business with some other products as well. And after 2 years, we were like 3 employees, and I had an office in Stockholm, made some money, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. But then one day in the summer of 1994, I was 22 years old, and I said to myself, so I wanted to build cars. I'm importing, exporting stuff, so that's not really what I want to do, even though it's kind of fun and making money. If I don't do it now, I probably will never do it. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to be difficult. So I better start now. So I opened up my Windows computer, opened up the simple program Paint, and started doing line drawings of my dream car I had been thinking about for a long time. And then I took those drawings to a friend of a friend who was an industrial designer, saying, this is my idea for the car. This is kind of proportions, low overhang, mid-engine, removable hardtop, wraparound screen, this and this and that. Can you help me sketch up something artistic around these ideas? So he started doing that, and then we did a kind of a clay model, and we kind of backwards and forwards together. And then 2 years later, that clay model turned into a running prototype. Pretty rough one, but we introduced it at Anderstorp Raceway in Sweden on one of the GT1 races where you had McLaren F1s for our F40s and things like that. And here is the new Swedish supercar, as it was called at the time. And so it was a bit of a tough years, very difficult to do that. It was a very rough car, but it was driving well, and it kind of proved that to myself, and that I could build something that worked and that had some kind of purpose and meaning. Then it took several years before it was actually a production car with several iterations. So we showed the first production car in the year 2000, and we delivered the first CC8S as a production car with the world record for the world's most powerful homologated car, Guinness record, and delivered the first car in 2002. So that's kind of the story.
For me, it's
Amazing.
it's cool to hear how you take it back to when you're 6 years old. And
Yeah.
like you would imagine that you have a person in their mid-20s, late 20s, who wants to build cars because it's a passion or it's cool or something. But you having this connection as a, I don't know, even like an entrepreneur at heart or like innovator, of seeing something visually in a movie at 6 years old and realizing like this is gonna be the way this is gonna make my business.
Right, and what's interesting, during my teenage years and so on, when I was still sketching cars, I was kind of buying car magazines for my pocket money, because I'm not an engineer, I'm not a software programmer, I'm basically nothing, I'm an entrepreneur. So to me, like if I'm going to build a car, I need to learn somehow. So I kind of bought all the car magazines I could find, and I started looking at all normal cars, sports cars, whatever. Why are they different? What is different about them? What is that detail on that car? How does that compare? What were they thinking when they did that? The corner of that door, or how the glass meets the A-pillar, or how it meets the door, or the seat, or the leather, or the lamp, or tire, or wheel. Trying to figure out, why are they different? What were they thinking? Why were they thinking like that? And what would I do? So always thinking like, how should I improve on that? So it was a very strange school. It was whether I was right or wrong, that's how I came to my ideas and visions of what I wanted. And then, of course, by doing, in reality, you learn and you kind of build up on that. But I remember, building the first car was very much based on those like 10, 15 years of just thinking about doing it and how I wanted to do it. And of course, being inspired by this bicycle repairman movie. He had a lot of unique features and functions and crazy stuff in his car. So I also wanted to how can I do it in a different way but not only to be different, but to make it better. And then you really need to study what everyone else is doing to try to do it better. Then in the end, of course, the result is sort of in the eyes of the beholder, and anyone can judge whether they think it's better or not or whatever. From a performance perspective, any other perspective, I think it's proven itself. Design and styling, and this, it's of course a matter of taste. So, but that's how it came about. And
Very interesting.
And I remember when I decided to do it, I was kind of very prepared to be. I mean, I'm a kid, basically 22 years old, in Sweden, no formal education, very little financial means. So I was very much prepared, and also at the time it was just after a recession. It was kind of the end of a recession, and all the supercar brands were kind of going broke, or even Bugatti went into bankruptcy, the Italian version of it, like 2 years after I started. The McLaren F1 had just come out, they could hardly sell it. So it was like the car magazine said, there is no more future for the supercar, as it was called then. And I said, well, I don't care. I decided 15 years ago I was going to do this, market or no market, I will build my car and maybe someone will want it. Maybe the world will change, who knows? In the end, the world changed, and there was a life for supercars and hypercars for sure after that recession. But it was, what I'm trying to say is, it was not a business idea. I was the wrong person at the wrong place, with the wrong background, with no market for the established brands, and definitely no market for my brand. And that was like, okay, let's do it.
I love that. I love that.
And then when you realize, I mean, that was a realization I had when I started. That's how it is, So I was prepared for anything. I mean, and it was very difficult, but I was prepared for people laughing or saying I'm an idiot, or technical challenges or financial challenges, whatever it was. I was like, of course, it's going to be like that, but I have no choice. I need to do this because that is what I decided so many years ago, and I don't want to do anything else. And that makes it easy, because you don't have to think about if it's a good or a bad choice. You just have to do it because that's who you are, pretty much. And I read somewhere quite recently that the personality of a person is very much shaped before like 10, 11 years old. It's like your experience, of course, who you are when you're born is maybe one thing as well, but your experiences and influences to create the personality that you become is very much set at that age. And it's difficult to change later. And I saw that movie when I was 6 years old. So, and it was immediately fascinated and stayed fascinated for years. So I had no way out. I just had to build that car, right? Then I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My mother, they're both retired now, my parents, but my mother was a millionaire, making hats, designing hats, so creative kind of profession, making things by hand, designing and creating. And so she was kind of an entrepreneur, designer. My father was always an entrepreneur, and they never kind of told me I need to be a doctor or a lawyer or do this or that. It's like, you do whatever you want kind of thing. So having been pre-programmed by that movie, having parents who are entrepreneurs, telling me, you do whatever you want, So that, of course, was, I guess, helpful, not being directed in any way. And here we are a few years later, I guess.
Amazing. You were mentioning earlier, we had the absolute pleasure to listen to you introduce your newest car. And you named it after your father. And the thing that I thought was very interesting was that you said that you called it after your father because he helped you a lot in times where you were quite struggling in the business. What kind of struggles were you facing at that point?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I had this little business. I made some money. I decided to start in 1994. And kind of after 1 year, prototype starting to look like some parts and a chassis and an engine, some wheels and things. We were like 2-3 people working on it. My money ran out. And my father was, even though my parents were supportive in that I was allowed to become whoever I wanted, or with no opinion from their side, they still kind of was shaking their heads a little bit. This is pretty far out there, son, what you're trying to do. So he came, I was in a small village in Sweden where I set up the shop, and he came to visit, and I was like, couldn't pay almost for anything, buy nothing, we're just working with the little stuff we had. And he being an entrepreneur, he was in the climate industry for early kind of computer controlled climate systems for industrial buildings, and he had a share in that company, and he was about to kind of soon get retired, so he sold his share in that company and was thinking, I'm going to get retired or do something else. And then he came and visit, and he saw kind of how hard we were fighting. There was actually something there, and he said, maybe I can give you a little bridge loan and try to help you. Maybe we can find some finance or something like that. And that ended up with him kind of sleeping in my small apartment together with me for 1.5, 2 years. We kind of absorbed his retirement fund during that period, making my mother and my sisters a little bit nervous, and actually me as well, because I didn't want to kind of jeopardize the family, you know. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was helpful, and of course it made me even more motivated, because now suddenly I had this support from my family, and I was kind of responsible for that as well, which was maybe not exactly my dream, but it made it possible to finish the first prototype, show it, and to take the next stepping stone, and finally getting in some venture capital from people who supported, who saw we were serious, and that we could go into production. And of course, looking back at it, without that support at the time, and without, let's say, his commitment and help as an entrepreneur, I don't think I would have made it. And also, not unimportantly, kind of feeling that responsibility for the whole family. I had it's not that I wasn't motivated, but I had like total motivation. You know, it says have to make it work. So and I'm grateful for that. You know, you kind of jump off the cliff, and then you have to kind of invent your parachute on your way down by restitching your clothes, kind of thing. Otherwise, you hit the ground. You know, you just do whatever you have to do, right? So yeah, and that made me even more, I think, resilient and determined, and the impossible became possible.
I really like that.
So when he turned 80 in 2019, we were introducing this new model at the Geneva Motor Show, and my colleague actually said, "Shouldn't we call it after your father?" I said, "That's a brilliant idea." So I really thank him for that idea, and so he came to the show. He usually comes to every show. He's 85 now, but it's very, very still going strong, and he didn't know. So he always kind of asked for the press release first, and so on. I want to see the press release. We can't really show it because it was a surprise. So we kind of made up a press release. We called the car like Ragnarok or something. So, and he said, nice car, but I don't like the name so much.
No worries.
And then we unveiled it, and it got very, very emotional. So
that is really, really awesome. I like the fact that you speak of resilience, and you mentioned it at the very end of the story, where the name of Jesco came from, because I believe that the true trait of a real entrepreneur is the resilience. And the resilience is something you're given when you're out there making that parachute by yourself, you also having the responsibility of your family sort of in your hands, handed over to you willingly by them, because they see their son is really burning for something. And that is something that is, I think, in today really rare, that you have a family which is so supportive to let their kids at the time excel at what they want to do, and then having the resilience to succeed, because this could have been an absolute failure had you not had the resilience.
Could have been absolutely awful for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Not only me. I mean, I was young. I could always restart, but my parents were already old, and this was kind of their savings. So
yeah. So I think that resilience, that the fact that you had that resilience to keep it going, is that something you always knew that you were capable of? Like, is there something you did maybe earlier in your life that proved you were really resilient as a person?
Good question. Did I do something particular? Well, it's more, I kind of had always the attitude that, how should I put it? Whatever we do in life, it seems to end eventually, right? So far for everyone. Maybe they will invent something soon, who knows, right? So there is like no sacrifice of trying your hardest or or just sitting on a park bench your whole life feeding ducks or something, in the end, we're all gone. So there is no better or worse path maybe to being gone. I just found it more interesting with that thought to give it my best of anything I can do while I'm here, because I have nothing to lose. I'm going to be gone anyway, right? So, so it's kind of the opposite of, I'm not trying to work my way out of not disappearing. It's the other aspect is we're anyway all going to disappear. So it's no cost working day and night super hard. It costs nothing because I'm going to be gone anyway in the end. So you can argue there's no reason to do anything. I argue it's a reason to do everything while I'm here. And I think that's kind of and I started thinking like that as a kid. So I think that's a very simple motivational force. There's nothing to lose, to just do whatever you want and work your ass off because we're all gone in the end anyway. Kind of strange motivation.
No. I think
It's
it's
the best motivation I've heard.
in fact, yes, because you have now we are living in a time of quick what do you say, quick solutions that if tomorrow the problem isn't gone, then I'm going to quit or whatever.
Right.
So to have that approach of giving you all, because in the end, if you don't, it's waste.
And if you fail, okay, I'm going to be gone anyway.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter failing or winning.
Yeah.
And when I remember when it was really tough and difficult, which was many times the first 10 years or so, or maybe a little bit longer, I always remember, it's really tough, and I don't even know if we'll make it to next week. This is great that I'm allowed to be around to do this and have this fight, and I'm still here. And maybe it doesn't work next week, but I could even, I remember surprising myself even at that time to be able to enjoy the moment of close to defeat with the mostly likely outcome of being defeat and still feeling okay about it.
Yeah.
So, because with this kind of fundamental thought that, as I explained first, it's okay. So,
you just speak about the moment there. We always talk in the Lobster Fight about the presence. People having such a difficult time being present. And I think you being in such a, not a struggling position, but you had to be truly present every day to just make it to the next day,
right.
Sort of.
Very much. Yeah.
Just let's zoom back. Like 1 hour ago, we were downstairs looking at the release of the Jesko in this incredible scenery of Como, where we're in this amazing villa, amazing people around. The weather is amazing. You're telling very passionately about how you created your car. And I'm looking around at the people, and I looked at Sean as well, and we just get that eye contact, like, yep, there's zero presence here. Everyone on their phone, just being there, not as a person present, listening word by word to what you're saying, but making a video of so to say, okay, I was there, but I actually don't
They
really
were filming, right?
don't profoundly heard what Christian said. I don't felt it. I didn't see the car with my whole body. And you going through such an experience of making these cars for the past 30 years or so has forced you every day to be present.
Right. That is, I think you're right. Yeah. It's
a gift, more or less, that you can put yourself there.
Exactly. I was thinking of saying something it is, presence is a good word, I think. It's being here all the time, thinking about every aspect. And enjoying it. I mean, I feel in many ways I haven't gone to work a day in my life. I mean, I've fought very, very hard, but it never felt like work. It's like a passion of what I like to do. And I don't feel like worn out. I mean, I work a lot and very, very hard, but I don't feel at all worn out. And sometimes it's stressful, but it's not like there's a negative stress. Even when it's difficult, it's like it's something to deal with, which is exciting somehow.
I think the excitement part there is important to keep on to. If you were to say this to other people, how can they achieve this? Is this something you teach your kids? Is there a way to teach them actually to put them in the same, I don't know, position, but scenery as you went through?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I came like from a struggling background. It was just an early and not a very. So it's quite normal, normal upbringing in a way, but I think you can train yourself. I mean, I had this early kind of thought about this, how I looked on life and what I wanted to do and the challenges and whatever. And I think you can basically train yourself to do it if you really want to. It's all about wanting, right? So the question is, how do you first want? How do you get to that feeling of wanting to do something? And maybe that's the most difficult part.
Definitely. I think it makes sense that to have that want, to create the want, is something most people, they struggle with. For you, it came...
Yeah, but there's so many things you can do in life,
Yeah,
right?
it's so true.
And am I only interested in sports cars? Well, many times it feels like that. But in reality, I have a lot of interest, and there's a lot of things I would maybe like to have done as well. There's so many opportunities out in the world. But if you want to achieve something, you basically just have to decide to be a certain version of yourself that focuses on that and motivate yourself that that's it. Whatever is interesting out there, otherwise, maybe later, maybe never, whatever, this is it for unknown period of time and maybe forever, and that's okay.
That's okay.
And that is. I mean, I didn't have difficulty with that, but I think a lot of people might have difficulty because you can be so many different versions of yourself, and then to decide I am only this because I'm going to be really good at it is difficult probably some days. And I'm not saying it was never anything I thought about, but I had decided this so early in my life that I always kind of, yeah, that's interesting, but not now, maybe never. This is who I am. This is what I do.
Wow. Big time. I know that there's one guy we like to quote sometimes, which is David Goggins. I don't know if you're aware of the guy. And he speaks about drive. What you're explaining here, I think, is drive. Because motivation, it comes and goes.
Right.
It's always like there's one day you're not motivated to go out, I don't know, for a run, to go to work or whatever. But you had the drive. And that drive is what's going to keep you going, kept you going to the point where we're now sitting in this incredible place in Lake Como, looking at what you created, looking back at a story that started at 6 years old.
Yeah.
I find it really cool.
I saw an interview with Elon Musk where he said, so where does your motivation come from? And I thought it was an interesting answer. He said, I don't need motivation. I don't need inspiration. We're just going to do it. It's it resonated. I kind of understood what he meant. It's like, screw everything,
Yeah.
I've decided, doesn't matter if I'm happy or sad, or I'm just going to do it regardless. It's kind of similar attitude, I think.
That reminds me of a question I overheard downstairs when someone asked you the question, would you make your car more, would you sacrifice performance to make it sound better? And you gave an amazing answer to it. And it was like, I remember your answer was, I don't think we have to do that. It does both.
Right. I mean, exactly. It was kind of a question. I said, do you kind of focus on making it do this or that sound-wise? And said, I mean, we try to make everything as good as we can, and then something comes out of that as a combination. And of course, after that, you can say, okay, and then we tune the sound on top of that or something.
Yeah.
But we've never done that. It's like, this is what this combination of everything we wanted to do wants to sound like. And there is a reason for everything on the car that is that way for a reason. And of course, if it sounded bad, well, that wouldn't be great. But they sound good in their own way, and they're very distinctive, and you can recognize the sound. And that's what they want to be with all the inputs we've had. And then we leave them like that.
I like that. I like the Lobster Fight today. I really like we've gotten now to experience what is in fact that has hardened your shell, that has made you this winning lobster in life, having gone through these challenges, facing them head on, keep going at it, and not letting certain things in your way throw you off course.
Right.
I think
there's a lot of challenges out there, and a lot of things that can throw you off course, or try to throw you off course even. I don't see myself as I'm a determined person, but I'm also somehow kind of a soft soul in a way. I'm not very hard. I mean, I'm hard in my fight, but I'm kind of gentle as well in a way. So, but if someone messes with my dream, I'm extremely hard, I guess.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Don't let anyone beat it down.
It's a great analogy of the lobster there, right there.
Yeah, soft on the inside. Hard. I'm more maybe hard on the inside, soft on the outside.
That's fair enough. We didn't say anything there. Absolutely. I'm really really happy. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's been a great pleasure to.
Thank you very much,
to get-
Christian.
to
Yeah, nice talking to
chat.
you both, and
Big
hope to
pleasure.
see you next year,
Yeah, well, absolutely.
or maybe in Monaco someday.
Yeah, there's
Please.
Grand Prix next week, but I don't know
Yeah.
if you'll be around.
I'm going to the Barcelona Grand Prix.
Fair
this year,
enough.
so-
Fair
very
enough.
cool.
Might be a bit
But,
more interesting to watch, in fact.
Yeah, I've been once to the Monaco Grand Prix. It was amazing,
Mm.
and I've been thinking of going back, but always been a bit busy.
Yeah.
Being
That's
an
it.
entrepreneur, that's the challenge. There's so many exciting things out there to do, but you have to focus.
Sacrifices.
Yeah.
Cool.
Amazing.
Awesome.
you very
Christian.
much.
Thanks
Cool.
so much.
Thank you.
Cool.
Big pleasure.